You've likely heard of Slay the Spire, right? It's an amazing game that even 5 years post-release continues to dominate, both in online metrics and reviews. Basically, it is agreed upon as the best single-player card game out there. But can it be the only outstanding one? Are there other card-based games that are equally as awesome? Have you ever come across Griftlands? Developed by Klei Entertainment, the same company behind such greats as Don't Starve franchise and Oxygen Not Included. Originally announced as an open-world RPG that somehow managed to transform into a roguelite deck builder, and a highly impressive one at that. A game that is filled with novel, interesting and unusual elements that are hard not to praise. Never heard of it, right? I won't be surprised, because somehow no one talks about it, but I believe it truly deserves to be talked about. So I'll do exactly that and invite you to join me. I want to kick it off with a brief development history, as its journey is quite intriguing, adds an interesting layer to the story, and may shed light on why it flew under many people's radar. Griftlands was initially announced in 2017 at the E3 event. Presented as an open-world RPG featuring turn-based combat and random encounters, reminiscent of the JRPG genre. The initial vision for Griftlands was remarkably ambitious, with developers aiming to incorporate extensive freedom and variability. The plan included implementing a full trading simulation, crafting system, dynamic factions, and a variable story. The confidence in the game was evident, so much so that they released an official trailer showcasing gameplay and even provided a release window. However, as is often the case in stories like this, something went awry. The anticipated release window arrived, but the game did not. There was no game and no news either. It seemed as though Griftlands had been forgotten. It wasn't until the late 2018 that we received a semblance of an update. A statement that simply stated, "We are still working on this game, and it is not cancelled. We jumped the gun on announcing it because we thought we were further along than we were." This still suggested that the originally announced game was in the works, just at a delayed schedule. But oh boy, that assumption turned out to be incorrect. More silence followed until E3 2019, where Griftlands resurfaced with a brand new trailer, this time showcasing a card building roguelite, a complete 180 from what was initially expected. This is a different game. While the art style remained the same, the core of the game had undergone a fundamental transformation. An alpha test began immediately, with early access scheduled for the following year and a planned release date set for autumn 2020. It was very ambitious to give a new release window for this game, and unsurprisingly, it did not meet this release date. Given its history, I honestly wouldn't have expected it to. The early access phase proceeded smoothly, with significant updates arriving every few months, introducing new enemies, bosses, cards, events, and even game modes. Despite the community being relatively small, the developers actively listened and responded to their feedback. The final release occurred on June 1st, 2021, nearly a year later than initially anticipated. Fortunately, the release was successful, we were presented with a completed product that we can still enjoy today. Now let's delve into what exactly Griftlands has to offer and see whether it managed to overcome its rough development journey to become a good game nevertheless. Thanks to its unique development history, Griftlands boasts some of the most distinctive aspects that set it apart not only from other card games, but also from most roguelikes. Despite its shift from its initially planned RPG structure, the game still retains RPG elements seamlessly integrated into the card-based gameplay. The main one is a substantial storyline, not just some world-building fragments hidden behind enemy and item descriptions, but a cohesive narrative complete with fully developed locations, characters, and even choices. This narrative element isn't just an add-on, it's a pivotal feature around which the entire gameplay revolves, well, like an RPG. And it really works. Having a plot fundamentally changes the game's structure. Griftlands isn't built as a simple sequence of randomly generated battles culminating in a boss fight. Instead, it presents a coherent narrative that spans the entirety of the game. This narrative evolves based on your choices and relationships with the in-game characters. And yes, you actually form relationship with people. In this world, characters have names, plans, allegiances, and history. They are fully realized individuals. Your actions hold weight, affecting these characters. You can develop friendships that provide bonuses, gifts, and assistance in battles. Conversely, you can make enemies who will attempt to sabotage you any chance they get. Actions have lasting consequences, and this dynamic adds a layer of depth and excitement to the gaming experience, which is awesome. Now you're probably wondering how all these RPG and plot elements exactly integrate into the card-based game. The key feature here is a world map. By visiting locations on the map, you encounter characters and through interactions with them, make choices that can significantly impact the story and shape the trajectory of your run. For instance, opting to accept a job from a local military force will close off the storyline involving the bandit faction, leading to a complete shift in the rest of your run. Aiding a weapons trader could mean that an artifact trader won't open their shop in this timeline. Even seemingly minor choices, such as not threatening someone, can determine whether they come to your aid when faced with a surprise monster. Choices like this abound throughout the game, where virtually every action carries at least some consequences. In many other roguelike games, after a few completed runs, you might feel like you've seen most of what the game has to offer: the bosses, enemies, and layouts. In games like this, the primary variable that changes from run to run are mostly just items and artifacts that you come across. But in Griftlands, the incorporation of these RPG elements introduces a multitude of additional changes from one run to the next that are a lot more substantial than just having a few distinct cards. But that's just broad statements. What about the details? What about the world of Griftlands? How well crafted is it? Well, it is great. The world is meticulously crafted and developed, with everything having a distinct meaning, purpose, and history. Each faction stands out with its uniqueness and intrigue. Characters are well developed with clear motivations for their actions and tangible goals they aim to achieve. Of course, it is in terms of a card game. You can't really compare it to the proper RPGs. By the way, your own character is no exception. The individual story for playable characters are particularly well crafted, exceeding expectations for a card building game. Right now though, I won't go into more detail about the story, due to the sheer depth and expansiveness of the narrative, which gets multiplied by the fact that there are 3 playable heroes, each with their own unique story featuring distinct characters, goals and complexities. And I genuinely mean it. When I initially played the game and completed my first few runs with Sal, the original character, I thought I had a solid grasp of the game's structure. There's this big bustling city teeming with people, places and events, and each of the playable characters would likely have their own story within this city. I expected the common plot device of experiencing the same events and characters from different perspectives. Imagine my shock when I embarked on a run as Rook, the second character, and it was nothing like what I just described. Everything was new and entirely unique. Rook's campaign presented a different and distinct narrative, set in another city with new characters, altered gameplay mechanics, and completely different cards. Even the music had changed. It truly is a unique standalone campaign. To say I was surprised would be an understatement. I hadn't even considered such a possibility. But Griftlands exceeded expectations by providing not 2, but 3 fully fledged campaigns like that, each exclusive to a playable character. This is just what this game does. Let's set aside the discussion on story and world building for now. Remarkable as they may be, you're probably here for a different reason, right? Let's talk about cards and deck building. At its core, Griftlands is a deck building roguelite. You select a character and embark on a run, with the primary goal of becoming powerful enough to survive 3 days and defeat the final boss. Strengthening your deck, forming alliances, and acquiring artifacts are essential elements, all of which require engaging in constant combat. Combat in Griftlands unfolds in 2 distinctive ways: through negotiations and battles. Consequently, you'll be simultaneously building 2 very different decks in every run, each tailored to the unique gameplay of its respective combat type. These combat types are very distinct and offer a unique gameplay experience, so let's explore each one individually. Let's begin with battles, as their gameplay is more conventional and would be familiar to those who have played similar games. Positioned against enemies on the right side, your objective is to defeat them through direct attacks while avoiding their counterattacks. At first glance, this setup appears very reminiscent of Slay the Spire. But as we will delve deeper, the game will unfold its unique characteristics. One of the standout features is that in most cases, there is no need to actually kill your enemies. Remember, each of them is a genuine person, with factions and allies, so the act of killing can have significant repercussions in this world. Instead, you have the option to force them into surrender by lowering their health below the panic threshold. When only panicking enemies remain, the fight concludes and you face a moral choice, whether to execute them anyway or spare their lives. This is a choice that you need to make in every battle, as both options have pros and cons. Sparing someone's life does not mean that they are now your friend. Someone may still hate your guts and seek revenge later, while others may be so grateful that they will become your ally.
Potisako. Tisiako.
Siatolsu? Shunta.
On the flip side, killing enemies can yield some valuable loot, occasionally even game-winning items. Also, just getting rid of someone can be very useful. Plus, after taking down a bunch of people, you gain a reputation, represented by a negotiation card, adding another strategic layer to this decision. These are just a few factors among many that you must weigh when engaging in a battle. Another rather interesting aspect of Griftlands is that you are not alone and can have allies. Up to 4 characters can be on each side, and your allies will utilize all of their special moves and abilities, the same as when they are enemies. Most allies are one-offs. They help you for a single fight and then just leave the party. These could be mercenaries that you hired for the task, or your friends who just happen to be at the same location. Additionally, you have the option of having pets, loyal animals that accompany you in every fight until they either defeated, sold, or abandoned. I have no idea what soulless people do the former two, but you do you. A further feature is the presence of bosses. Bosses are exclusively fought through battles, although you can have negotiations with some of them to potentially make the approaching battle a bit easier. Boss fights are obviously distinct from regular battles, featuring unique mechanics, exclusive cards, buffs and debuffs specific to a boss, and so on. Impressively, the game boasts a total of 29 bosses. While not all of them are created equally, some may be encountered more frequently or prove less interesting, the sheer variability is noteworthy. A crucial topic I can't forget is item cards. A unique card type that can do basically anything in the game. Usually, the effects of these cards are very strong. Drawing 3 cards for free, gaining an action and drawing a card also for no cost, or dealing damage and stunning an enemy for just 1 action. Sounds too good to be true. And there is a caveat to them. Most item cards can only be used a set number of times before they are destroyed, permanently removing them from your deck. A fascinating mechanic that completely changes the way you build your decks, especially as item cards are not some rare or optional inclusion. They are everywhere and will often be the staple of your deck. You buy them from traders, you get them as quest rewards, and defeated enemies drop loot also in the form of item cards. More challenging foes and quests offer better items, some of which even have an unlimited number of uses. These cards can be incredibly powerful and, in some cases, game-winning. On the other hand, managing the limited use of your item cards requires careful planning and decision-making. Building your deck around cards that can be destroyed can be very tough. Last but not least is the card upgrade mechanic. While upgrading cards is a common feature in card games, what sets Griftlands apart is how you upgrade them. In this game, to upgrade a card, you simply need to play it a certain number of times. There's no need to visit a special location or pay someone to do it. You just need to use the card. This mechanic is both satisfying and intuitive. After all, the more you do something, the better you become at it, right? When a card upgrades, you're presented with 2 different variants to choose from. This adds a layer of variability and strategy. There's one exception though. The basic cards you start with have 10 upgrade variants, out of which 2 are randomly selected for you to choose from when upgrading the card. This means that you can't always rely on the same upgrades for your basic cards. There's an element of randomness involved, forcing you to adapt on the fly. Upgrading cards, by the way, is not exclusive to battles. Negotiation cards also follow the same principle. What a smooth transition, if I do say so myself. It looks like we are talking about negotiations now. Negotiations offer a stark contrast to battles. Instead of engaging in physical combat, negotiations are a battle of wits and words. You enter negotiations when attempting to persuade someone, deceive your way out of a difficult situation, or coerce someone into submission without resorting to violence. In most cases, negotiations provide a peaceful resolution that avoids making more enemies and prevents casualties. More often than not, they can even lead to making new allies. However, negotiations aren't always about being peaceful and friendly. They can also be strategically used to gain advantages in battles by persuading people to assist you in combat or intimidating them to weaken their resolve, making them more likely to surrender. Gameplay-wise, if I said that battles are similar to Slay the Spire, then negotiations bear more resemblance to something like Hearthstone. Kinda, in a way. You can directly attack the enemy's core with your cards, or you can deploy arguments on the board, and they work similarly to how minions work in Hearthstone. Thus the comparison. Certain arguments can taunt enemies, redirecting their attacks. Others can directly attack the opponent or apply various buffs and debuffs. Some arguments can even be deployed onto the enemy's board to disrupt their strategy. Just the same as you, enemies also deploy cards on their board and insert their arguments into your playing field. Negotiation cards are mostly divided into red hostility cards, which typically involve threatening your opponent, and green diplomacy cards, which aim to achieve your goals through peaceful dialogue. However, in reality, whether you reach your goal through diplomacy or hostility doesn't affect the narrative in any way at all. It's primarily just a gameplay distinction, as you often build your decks around either red or green cards, since they don't synergize well together. However, it's more complex than that and heavily depends on various factors that arise during gameplay. I'll delve into this a bit further when discussing the individual characters and their gameplay. One crucial aspect is that losing in a negotiation won't end the game. The only way to lose is to die, and that can only happen in battles. Therefore, negotiations are always a safe option, because even if you lose, the consequences are usually manageable. Due to this and various other factors, it's practically impossible to have runs where you exclusively engage in battles or negotiations. Even though these are two separate mechanics with distinct decks, the optimal approach is almost always to maintain some balance between them. Some situations simply cannot be resolved with only one or the other. It's usually a combination of both. Even if your intention is just to kill everyone you can, negotiations can still be beneficial for intimidating opponents or securing better rewards. Besides, there are situations when enemies are simply too formidable to confront directly, making negotiations a smarter choice. What's more, battles and negotiations have separate health bars. further emphasizing the importance of balancing between the two. You might face several tough battles in a row and have low HP, but still have plenty of resolve, enabling your negotiations. This design encourages players to utilize both major combat mechanics without forcing it. The decision to incorporate two distinct combat types into the game is a refreshing game design choice that can be extremely hard to pull off. I can easily see the world where managing two decks at the same time becomes very jarring and bothersome fast, possibly leading players to abandon one combat type to entirely focus on the other. Thankfully, Griftlands is not from that world. Although battles and negotiations are wildly different from one another, I think that Griftlands does an excellent job of making both feel cohesive and engaging. While some runs may lean more heavily into one combat type than the other, there's always reason to utilize and develop both decks, and I never found it jarring, distracting or boring. Somehow, Griftlands managed to pull off this complex mechanic in a great fashion. Aside from directly improving your deck, another way to become stronger in Griftlands is by obtaining artifacts. There are two different systems for this. The first one revolves around grafts, which are relatively straightforward. You obtain grafts by defeating bosses, purchasing them from special shops, or receiving them as quest rewards. There is a limit to the number of grafts you can have at any given time, as indicated by these available slots. Upon installing a graft in one of these slots, you acquire a special bonus associated with it. For example, you may gain the ability to apply bleed to enemies every turn, or receive defense when you play a card. There is a wide variety of grafts available, each offering unique bonuses that can significantly impact your strategy. Finding one that synergizes with your current deck feels incredibly satisfying. When everything falls into place like that, those are the best runs.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
And what's also neat about grafts is that they also upgrade the same way cards do. When you trigger the graft's special effect a set number of times, it becomes stronger, granting even more powerful benefits. Draw 2 cards instead of 1, deal 4 damage instead of 3, and so on. The second system is a bit more unique, and I quite enjoy that. It is anchored in the relationship system of this game. As I've previously mentioned, every character in Griftlands can either love or hate you, and depending on this relationship, you can receive what is called boons and banes. Your friends, people that love you, grant you boons that have positive effects, while banes come from those who hate you and provide negative effects. The effects of boons and banes differ widely. There are a lot of them, and each does something special. For the most part, they are just minor benefits or drawbacks, but their impact is amplified by the sheer quantity of relationships you form, so you accumulate quite a few boons and banes throughout the game. Although most effects are subtle, some are notably stronger. Certain banes have the potential to derail your entire run if you're not careful enough. Personally, I find this system especially enjoyable. It encourages players to carefully weigh their decisions regarding which conflict to engage in, which character to befriend, who to avoid, and who might be better off dead. The interconnectedness of all these systems creates a cohesive and deep gameplay experience. Alright, so we've covered the core gameplay. Combat through negotiations and battle grows stronger by adding and upgrading cards, making friends and obtaining crafts. But the heart of the game, the main driving force, the element that truly alters your gameplay experience is the character that you choose. As I've said before, each campaign is incredibly unique, and this uniqueness extends to the playable characters. Each character is exceptional and brings their own flavor to the game. So let's take a closer look at each of the three main characters and what sets them apart. Sal is the first and arguably the most straightforward character in Griftlands. She embodies the classic assassin fighter archetype. Her storyline revolves around seeking revenge for the betrayal she suffered at the hands of her former boss, Cassio, who orchestrated the death of Sal's parents and sold her into slavery. Now, after nearly a decade, Sal returns seeking vengeance. Her sole objective is to eliminate Cassio by any means necessary.
You're here for Cassio. That's the only way this story ends.
This means aligning herself with either the greedy and corrupt police force that hunts Cassio as she became a criminal kingpin in the meantime, or joining the bandits who want to expand their shady business and see Cassio as an obstacle. In terms of gameplay, Sal is easy to grasp, as most of her mechanics are pretty straightforward. For example, one of her abilities is Bleed, which inflicts damage based on the amount of bleed applied to the enemy. The strategy here is simply to stack as much bleed as possible. Sal's more distinguishing mechanic is combo. By playing specific cards, you can accumulate combo stacks. This combo can then be spent on powerful finisher cards, typically dealing huge amounts of damage to enemies. Repeat this process a few times and they are toast. This cycle of building combo and unleashing devastating finishers is the core of Sal's battle strategy. Sal's negotiation style is pretty standard, with most decks focused on stacking either influence or dominance. There is nothing too unique about them. Honestly, there's not much more to say about Sal. She's very basic and straightforward, both in terms of her story and gameplay. But that doesn't mean she's boring, just uncomplicated and to the point. Rook is the second character, unlocked after completing Sal's campaign. He offers a vastly different experience from Sal and introduces a much more unique narrative. Formerly a captain in the local military force known as the Admiralty,
Captain Rook, the veteran, the hero, the saboteur, the spy.
Rook is now operating as a spy on a secret mission. What mission exactly? That's the best part. It's a secret, even from you. Rook's journey begins in the Grout Bog, a treacherous swamp plagued by dangerous creatures that is serving as a labor camp controlled by the technocratic faction known as the Spark Barons. Local workers, dissatisfied with the Spark Barons' exploitation and oppressive practices, have formed the Rise, a radical freedom movement advocating for workers' rights. Tensions escalate as the Rise prepares to revolt, while Spark Barons brace to suppress it. And here enters Rook the Spy. You are a double agent recruited by the Spire Barons to infiltrate the Rise and destroy it from within. Oh no, scratch that. You are a double agent recruited by the Rise to infiltrate the Spire Barons and help to kick off the rebellion. Wait, also no. You are both? Are you a triple agent? This is the twist. Rook is a spy hired by both factions to infiltrate and sabotage the other. Both factions believe you're their double agent, so they don't mind if you cause a bit of damage, because they believe you are doing it just to blend in. Whose side are you really on, and which of the factions you actually want to help is only up to you, the player. But until the time comes to make your decision, you can mislead and backstab both of them. This is such an awesome concept, and its execution is equally impressive. One of the best things is that the game doesn't spell it out for you. When you embark on Rook's campaign, you are clueless about the true nature of his mission. At first, you believe that you are just a double agent of the faction that you chose, only to discover that the other faction also sees you as their spy. It's a mind-bending realization that leaves you, the player, questioning whose side are you really on. Rook's gameplay is also very intriguing, especially in negotiations. But let's start with battles. His battles are designed around his trusty energy pistols and a unique chambers mechanic. By default, his pistols have 4 chambers. Each empty chamber grants 1 defense at the end of your turn. And if all chambers are empty, certain cards can trigger extra effects. On the flip side, charged chambers offer no immediate benefit, but some cards can consume this charge to enhance their effects. If you gain more charge while already fully charged, you accumulate overcharge, boosting the maximum damage of your cards. This means that cards that dealt 1 to 3 damage now will do 1 to 4 damage. This synergizes with Rook's concentration mechanic, which increases the minimum damage of his cards. Mastering this intricate balance between charge, overcharge and concentration is key to maximizing Rook's combat effectiveness, offering immense power at the cost of careful strategy. All this may sound complicated, but it is actually very intuitive and easy to grasp. Rook's negotiations take his uniqueness even further. The defining feature is his lucky coin, a pivotal element around which all decks are built. Plenty of Rook's cards come with a gamble keyword, prompting him to flip the coin, landing on either heads or snails. The outcome determines the effect. Heads often offer utility benefit, like drawing cards or providing block, while snails lean towards offensive actions, like dealing damage to enemies. By themselves, these effects are not inherently game-changing. Receiving a bit of block once in a while probably won't win you a run. But here's where things get interesting. Many of Rook's cards have special effects based on the current side of his lucky coin. Diplomacy cards receive upgrades when the coin shows heads, while hostility cards benefit from snails. This encourages you to strategically gamble to capitalize on these effects, especially with mixed decks. However, if you're focusing on one type of cards, you'll want to ensure the coin stays on the corresponding side. Managing this can be tricky, as many cards involve gambling the coin. To mitigate this, Rook can sometimes cheat by rigging the next coin toss or just straight away setting the coin however you want. In addition to the lucky coin, Rook employs other unique negotiation mechanics. One standout that I really enjoyed is preparing cards. When a card is in the leftmost position in Rook's hand, it becomes prepared. Some cards, when prepared, obtain incredible buffs, such as returning energy or receiving huge damage boosts. This can turn each negotiation into some sort of a puzzle, where you want to juggle your hand by playing cards in a specific order, so that other cards would get into the leftmost position and become prepared. Personally, I'm a big fan of Rook. His story is refreshingly thrilling and full of twists. Participating in it feels like an actual spy movie. Both his battles and negotiations are extremely unique and bursting with unusual strategies and deck possibilities. His design feels spot on to me, but whether it's just my preference or if the developers truly nailed it, I can't say for sure. But enough about Rook. There's one more character in the game, and he's also quite intriguing. Last but not least, let's talk about Smith. Smith stands out as the only non-human playable character in the game, hailing from the race of Kradeshi, a slug-like amphibian with a remarkable talent for regeneration. Smith is a member of the Banquots, a wealthy and noble dynasty. All of his siblings are successful people who managed to make a name for themselves.
Meanwhile, your siblings flourished. Theru, the baby, grew out of diapers and into the Merchant's Guild, keeping his skin oiled. Mullafi, your twin sister, sharpened her teeth at the Admiralty, swimming up the ranks like a sharp-toothed eel. And Vixmali, the eldest, became a Hessian cardinal. Guess those family ties paid off.
On the other hand, Smith took a different path, becoming a troublemaker known for frequenting bars rather than pursuing success. This lack of ambition led to resentment from his family, particularly his parents. Tragedy strikes when Smith's parents are killed during a religious ritual. But when he attempted to return home for the funeral, he was tossed out. Turns out, his siblings, considering him a disgrace to the family, decided to disown him, denying him any inheritance from their parents. Smith's story revolves around his quest to restore justice by reclaiming his place in the family and securing his rightful inheritance. This can be achieved by either reconciling with his siblings and restoring his reputation, or through seeking revenge by killing them all and taking all the wealth for yourself. Smith's playstyle differs significantly from those of Sal and Rook. His focus is mostly on battles, which is very fitting for him, as he is a chaotic and aggressive bar brawler type of person. Because of this, his battles are particularly engaging, revolving around his two primary traits: hurting himself and drinking booze. Smith's unique mechanic is Moxie, and it makes it so that each turn he heals by an amount equal to the Moxie, which increases when he takes damage on his own turn. Or in other words, he heals when he hurts himself. Consequently, Smith has numerous cards that deal damage to himself to accumulate Moxie. In addition to that, he employs an Alleviate mechanic, which restores a portion of the health lost during the turn. The idea is to constantly damage yourself, but then heal back thanks to the Moxie and Alleviate. creating a very aggressive and dangerous playstyle. Another unique aspect of Smith's gameplay is him being a drunkard. Many of his cards allow him to drink booze, adding empty bottles to his deck. These empty bottles can then be used to enhance his other cards. By consuming bottles, you can play cards multiple times per turn, play cards for free, increase damage on cards, etc. Besides these two mechanics, he also possesses numerous other unique battle features such as Adrenaline, Threshold and Chain that make his battles even more special. Smith's negotiations are not nearly as unique as his battles and do not include as many special mechanics. There is basically just one: Renowned, dealing damage to a random target for every 2 stacks. Some cards also interact with Renowned, either triggering special effects or spending stacks for powerful abilities. The goal usually is to stack as much Renowned as possible while defending it from enemy attacks. Other than that, his negotiations primarily consist of classical diplomacy and hostility strategies, with a few interesting cards here and there, but nothing truly game-changing. Overall, Smith is an interesting character. He embodies somewhat of an anti-hero persona, being a bully, drunkard and troublemaker. Yet despite his flaws, he does not deserve the way he was mistreated by his family. This makes his quest for justice compelling, although his methods of achieving it can be pretty gnarly. From a gameplay perspective, Smith is clearly designed to focus more on battles than negotiations, with his battle cards offering more unique features than anyone else. The concept of a character who thrives on chaos, who is constantly wasted, hurling empty bottles at opponents and damaging himself in fits of rage, yet still enduring, is a fun and entertaining one. So yeah, in conclusion, Griftlands boasts 3 playable characters, each offering a completely unique gameplay experience. With around 200 individual cards each, and a personal campaign packed with memorable story, characters, events and bosses. These campaigns have so much variety that playing each of them almost feels like playing a different game entirely. I've been mainly singing praises for this game, haven't I? So is it perfect then? Well, of course not. The negatives are just rather small, and I haven't really had the chance to shine a light on them. So let's do that now. You know, there is actually one problem with having 3 unique characters, each with their own individual campaigns. It is that progression and unlocks are also separate for every character. Now, it's understandable that unlocking cards and outfits would be tied to specific characters. But there's also a character upgrade system. This system allows you to collect a rare currency called metal, which is saved between runs and can be spent to permanently enhance your characters. These upgrades, such as increasing maximum health or recovering HP after every combat encounter, are also separate for each character. Since metal is quite scarce, to truly strengthen someone, you're essentially required to main that character and focus on playing exclusively as them. But what's even more frustrating is the fact that you also need to unlock the difficulty with each character. This is just bizarre, especially since Prestige 1 is such a cakewalk. When you're playing your first run ever, it is fine to start on an easy difficulty. But after becoming familiar with the game and beating it multiple times, perhaps even on Prestige 3 or 4, being forced to play the newly unlocked campaign on Prestige 1 again? This run would just be boring and way too easy. So to quote-unquote complete the game, you need to win at least 8 increasingly difficult runs with every character. What makes it even worse is that you're pushed to do all that twice. Why twice? Because there are actually 2 game modes that you unlock difficulties for separately: Adventure and Brawl. What the heck is Brawl, do you ask? It's essentially a more simplified and streamlined version of the game that solely focuses on combat and deck building. It discards the world map, all of the story, and even most choices. Honestly, this is basically the Slay the Spire gameplay loop. In Brawl mode, you get 5 randomly generated days with a couple of encounters consisting solely of negotiations and battles. Between the fights, you can visit shops and interact with people to maybe make some friends or hire someone to help you on the next assignment. At the end of the day, you have a boss fight. Stick around for 5 days, defeat the final boss, and that's it. No story development, no intrigue, no moral choices, just pure, unedited combat. Brawl offers a different kind of gameplay that is much quicker and extremely combat focused, which is perfect for when you just want to jump straight into the action. However, for me, it is just not as enjoyable as Adventure. Griftlands is about the story and choices, and without them, it is not entirely the same. Brawl is fun, but Adventure is clearly the core part of the game. Sorry, I've got carried away. Back to discussing the negatives. The next point I want to address is the somewhat lack of variability. Actually, Griftlands features plenty of unique enemy types across its 3 campaigns, both in battles and negotiations. All of them are different, with unique movesets and striking visuals. However, the issue lies in the fact that from a gameplay standpoint, they are just not unique enough. Despite having unique movesets, they don't particularly alter your approach to deck building. This can lead to a sense of repetitiveness, especially after a few dozen hours of gameplay. But honestly, most games will become repetitive at that point. The final, third issue for me was randomness, especially randomness in difficulty levels. It is quite challenging to design a game based on randomness, such as a roguelike, to be truly balanced, and Griftlands struggles in this regard at times. Sometimes situations arise where you simply can't win. You got unlucky and you lost, not because you played poorly or made wrong choices. Nope, the random factor just screwed you over and you can't do anything about that. Randomness is a major element of many roguelikes, but the best ones strive to minimize its negative impact on player experience, aiming for a more balanced and skill-driven gameplay loop. Right now on the screen is the first fight of the whole run. I have a starting deck, and there were no opportunities to improve it, make allies, or hire someone. The fight is unwinnable, and there is literally nothing I can do. This is quite frustrating, and I hate when things like this happen in games. To clarify, this is not something that happens often. absolutely not. But even once in a while is enough to become irritating. Oh, and here is 5 minutes later, the first fight of the next run. Extremely easy, took less than 30 seconds, and I took no damage. It is what it is, but come on. Keeping the spotlight on the randomness, because of it can be way too hard to build the deck that you want. This is in the spirit of the game. Yes, roguelikes are often rooted in randomness. But there are instances when you want to try something, when you have a specific deck idea in mind, but you can't realize it due to all the randomness. Everything, from quest rewards to post-battle loot and shop inventory, is subject to chance. There is no way to get even a single specific card. You simply must get lucky. Or are you? Griftlands introduces an interesting feature known as mutators. These mutators allow you to modify certain game rules to tailor your experience. If there are aspects of the game you're not fond of, there is a good chance that mutators can scratch that itch for you. Want to have more pets? Kill everyone with no repercussions. Draft cards at the start of the game to have a better chance at crafting your favorite deck? The possibilities are extensive, including making a game harder or even creating custom challenges. For instance, you can enforce a vendetta for all characters, causing them to exclusively target you while disregarding your allies, or completely disable healing at the end of the day. There is so much going on here, and this level of customization is a brilliant game design choice. It empowers players to shape their gameplay experience according to their preferences. It significantly extends the game's lifespan, offering a solution for when the basic game becomes a bit repetitive and stale. A simple adjustment or a complete rule change via mutators can breathe new life into the Griftlands. Do you know what allows you to customize the game even more? Modding. If you are familiar with me, you know I can't resist discussing mods whenever a game supports them, and Griftlands offers full Steam Workshop support, opening the door to extensive modding possibilities. Despite the small community, there are several impressive mods available. Some mods offer minor adjustments to various aspects of the game, like enabling all characters to play any campaign, or making the Brawl mod endless. However, there are also a few surprisingly substantial mods that introduce significant changes and additions far beyond what I ever expected. More upgrade variety introduces just that, additional upgrade options for many cards, expanding the deck customization possibilities. Griftlands Expanded goes even further by incorporating multiple new cards, crafts, items and bosses into Sal's and Rook's campaigns. Because why not? However, the most ambitious mods are those that introduce entirely new characters to the game, complete with unique cards, mechanics and stories. Obviously, not all of these mods are of the same quality, like Shell's Adventure and Rise of Cassio. While I enjoyed both of them and they do offer intriguing concepts and promising ideas, these character mods are clearly neither finished nor polished, especially Shell's Adventure. In contrast, Assassin's Obligation stands out as a more refined and basically fully developed character mod. It features an unconventional assassin character who relies on running from battles as one of his main means of survival. Victor is designed like a glass cannon type of character that deals huge damage, but at the same time dies really fast. Overall, awesome and pretty high quality mod. Moreover, it continues to receive updates and improvements to this very day. Nevertheless, the pinnacle of modding excellence in Griftlands, without a doubt, is Erin's Last Day. This mod not only introduces a new character with a distinctive playstyle, coming in with an extensive array of content, including 200 new cards, over 40 crafts, and numerous new gameplay mechanics, but it also adds a fully fleshed out campaign for this character, complete with its own story, voiced cutscenes, and original artwork made solely for this mod.
Now you are the right-hand enforcer of wealthy technocrats.
Not only that, it also introduces a new expedition game mode, blending elements of both adventure and brawl modes. Erin is incredibly fun to play. Her mechanics are extremely unique and are nothing like anyone else in the game. The attention to detail and high level of polish make this mod almost indistinguishable from the official content of the game. I will never tire of witnessing the incredible creativity and dedication of the modding communities. So, what exactly is Griftlands? It is a hugely underrated and underappreciated game that unfortunately flew under the radar despite being developed and published by a major studio. But why? Maybe due to the challenging and ever-changing development process. Maybe due to the lack of advertisement and communication. Maybe it just got unlucky. Nevertheless, this oversight is not fair. Griftlands deserves recognition. It deserves to be popular and appreciated. Look, I'm not claiming it's the best card building game out there. However, I am claiming that it undoubtedly offers an exceptionally high quality and fun experience. You can't deny all of its innovative ideas, from its RPG mechanics to its 3 fully realized and distinct campaigns. Griftlands offers something truly special. That's why it's worth giving it a shot. If you're even remotely interested in card games, I strongly encourage you to venture into the world of Griftlands. You're bound to have a fantastic time. I expected this video to be a short, in and out, 20-minute adventure.
Let's go, in and out, 20 minutes adventure.
I still don't understand how and when it turned into this hour-long in-depth review. But hey, you watched until the very end. I hope that means that you enjoyed it. If so, please do give a like and subscribe to the channel. It would mean the world to me. Also, be sure to check out my other videos, like my deep dive into modded Terraria here, or my retrospective of Horizon Zero Dawn right here. Thank you and see you in the next one.